what's up, everybody? I'm back before you. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about evolution, my journey of evolution, and just talk to you a little bit more about me so that you can get to know me a little bit better. And as I'm evolving, I have invited all of you to watch me evolve. And also, I am challenging all of you to evolve. And so, if I'm going to challenge you with something, I need to share a little bit more about myself and how and why I evolved. And so, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today. So, let me talk to you a little bit about evolution and why I sort of have been hanging on to that phrase evolution. And so the definition of evolution is taking something from its simple form and moving it to its more complex form, right? So that is basically hopefully what each and every one of us is doing, right? We want to be moving from the simple form to a more complex form, something that doesn't look like it did last year. I know that for some of us that go to church, it's like, thank God that, I don't look like I did last year, right? So we always want to constantly be moving forward. But for some of us, the idea of moving forward and the idea of evolving is greater than actually being in the fray of evolution. But, I have a lot of thoughts and ideas about evolving and just really how to just sort of putting my information out there, words of wisdom. But if I'm going to be putting out words of wisdom and you be like, well, who does she think she is to be putting out this information? So I'm going to start with myself and just let you know a little bit about me. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I have 2 children. I have a 1-year-old and I have a 20-year-old. And so I'm 42. I'm not ashamed to say how old I am. Thank God I don't look like 42, okay? But I am 42. I'm a wife. I've only been married for 3 years. It's my first, and it will be my only marriage. And so I've only been married for 3 years. So that in itself, becoming a wife, has been definitely part of my evolution. But just sharing more about me. So I'm a wife, I'm a mother. I love the Lord. I'm a minister. And so I'm a minister of the gospel. I'm also somebody that loves to share wisdom. I love to have a good time. I love food. I'll talk to you a little bit about that because my love of food went into the danger zone. I used to weigh 420 pounds. I had gastric bypass surgery in June of 2010. And so that has been part of my evolution. I was a single mom for 16 years. So I understand about being a single mom. And also, I didn't grow up in church. I do attend church. I've been saved for like 12 years, 12 or 13 years, but I didn't grow up in church. I didn't have a praying grandma. I didn't have a praying auntie or anything like that. I just had a friend that introduced me to Christ. She grew up in church, but I had a friend that introduced me to Christ, and it just went from there. But coming to know God has definitely, especially getting saved in my late 20s, was definitely different because I had my whole idea about dating, relationships. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Sometimes when you grow up in church and they're teaching you about saving yourself, I'm not saying that you're not supposed to. I'm just saying about the teaching, the mindset that comes with it. So I came to God with a whole different point of view during my evolution as a saved person, trying to abandon some of those things, thinking that they weren't God, but in my evolution process, coming back to some of those things that made me who God called me to be, who, not even who he called me to be, who God created me to be. And so it's been interesting. And those are just some of the things that I want to share with you guys, just as you take a look at my journey. I left my job in May to become I keep swallowing. And when I watch a lot of Periscopes or Facebook Live or videos on YouTube, one of my pet peeves is that people, they speak and then they go, and they take that big swallow. But I guess if you're talking, it's kind of hard. So note to self, I'm going to make sure that I have... See, I did it again. That I have water or something, or that I make sure that I'm hydrated before I come before you, because I don't want to do what drives me crazy, which is that swallow thing. But I'm gonna probably keep doing that for a little bit through the rest of this, you guys. So hang with me. So anyway, I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again. Awesome. So what I have learned, definitely through this whole process. So going back to my thoughts run. So going back to, I left my job in May to become a life coach and do some consulting full time. So that's really big for me. I was a professional in the administrative field for 17 years. I started off as a customer service rep for a bottled water company. After a year being with that company, I was promoted to a supervisor. I was a supervisor there for 6 of the 7 years that I worked there. I moved on to work for a dialysis company. I worked there for 8 years and was also in leadership there for 8 years. I took a year off when I got married, and then I went back and worked for a private cardiology practice and worked there for 2 years, where I was also in management. So I've been in management all of my career, and so a lot of those principles I carry. I love to see people grow. So growth, whether it be corporately, spiritually, in your life, mentally, growing physically, because like I said, I went through gastric bypass surgery, and so growing out of a big body into a smaller body was definitely a process, and some of those mindsets, and those are just some of the things that I want to share with you. But through all of that, and through that time, I just have always had a passion to speak into people's lives, people who thought maybe they couldn't, they shoulda, woulda, coulda, can't do something, just to be able to speak into people's lives. And also that being a person that has always done that, but people viewed me as someone who maybe didn't need their life to be spoken into. And so I'll be sharing with you some of those experiences too, because along the way, I've experienced a lot of heartbreak, done some crazy things. I was in a relationship with what I called my high school sweetheart, who went to prison after we were together a year when I was a teenager. And basically I sort of hung on to that relationship. He was incarcerated for 17 years. And so I sort of hung on to that scenario, and I'll talk a little bit about that too, because so when I'm trying to talk to you and figure out like who my core audience is, there's a lot of you, people that are struggling with their weight. I have a lot to say about that, about food addictions, about going through the surgery, about that whole transition. I have a lot to say about that. Being in toxic relationships, and having toxic behavior, self-destructive behavior as a woman. I have a lot to say about that. Men, I have a lot to say about men and how men are treated. I believe men are treated unfairly. I have a heart for men. So I have a lot to say about that. Empowering people, people taking, I believe that God gives us power. But in order for God to be able to activate himself in our lives, we have to surrender to God, which I believe is an action. Surrender is an action. And so if you don't take action, if you're not an action taking type of person, if you're not a decision maker, I call it executive. I love to make an executive decision. Please trust and believe. When a lot of times some of the leaders and I, when we are in church and we're sort of trying to figure it out and I can see things are moving around, I'll be like, do I need to make an executive decision? Because I will go out on a limb and do that. And I have some thoughts and really some key things that I believe, executive decision making ends up blessing. It will bless you. But I've been through a lot of things. Like I said, I was a single parent. I've ruined my credit. I've had terrible credit. I just been through a lot, and so I understand. Like I said, I was been in management. I've only had 3 jobs, but had a 17-year career. A lot of people move around. Like I said, one job for 7, another job for 8, and then another job for almost 3. So. I've been there a long time, and I don't even have an associate's degree, and that's not a brag because I'd love to, and one of my goals is to earn a college degree, but so many of us are out here and thinking that we can't or we shouldn't, but you can. It's harder. It's harder to get there without a college education, but it's possible, and college isn't for everybody. So, but not that I'm against college, but some people need to hear that it's just not for everybody. So, a mind is a terrible thing to waste, and you may not find your mind always on a college campus, okay? So, those are just some things, but, so through all of that, I feel like in every experience that I have evolved, part of my evolution process is going through a lot of things publicly. I was never the person where something really terrible would happen to them and nobody knew. I was always like something bad would happen. Like even in high school, I'd go to a party and I would drink too much and I would be the one that would just be out there, and then that would be like the talk of school for like 3 weeks, not 3 days, 3 weeks. And so I suffered a lot publicly, but I really believe that God was building me up to be able to endure, and also to be able to transition from all of those mistakes to when you are moving forward and you're making your mistakes in God, coming from where I couldn't hear his voice, but going to a place where you hear his voice and you're human, you're still going to make mistakes. The Bible says that his grace is sufficient, but his grace is sufficient for your forward moving evolution in him. Grace is not sufficient for you to consciously be making mistakes and doing the same old thing. It's for forward moving, forward motion. So look, I'm supposed to be talking about myself, but I can't help it. I'm always jumping on my soapbox. So but it's because I'm super passionate, because I've lived a lot of things. I'm super passionate because I know deep down inside what certain things, what it's like to go through and come out on the other side, because I've done it. And I'm sure that I've had more humiliation than some, and I'm sure there's some out there that have experienced things worse, heartbreak worse than mine, or letdown. But whether it's not a competition for me, whether or not it's been worse, but it's a mission for me to begin to empower people and just to show them through my journey. So me moving in this transition, me leaving my job and and going into this next phase of life, I'm inviting you guys to experience with me. So I'm just asking you guys to stay tuned. I kind of went all over the place, but that's what I do. So you'll see that soon.